Hey guys, it's Zach and welcome back to the shop. Today we install a 3-inch lift on this bad boy. Okay, so I wasn't sure how I wanted to tell the story here, but I figured I would just tell you the process I took to do this. This is the first time I've ever done something like this, so I wasn't sure exactly how to go into it. I mean, there was definitely instructions and stuff. I installed a Teraflex 3-inch lift, and it came with everything I needed to do that, which was super cool. But I started on the front. I figured that would be the hardest thing to do first, so wanted to knock that out. And so first things first, I started just unbolting everything. So like the sorry, the sway bar. I unbolted the sway bar, and I unbolted the shocks, the panhard bar. Also, make sure you get rid of the brakes, or unbolt the brakes so that you can get a little bit loose. And the one thing that it didn't mention, I don't think it mentioned in the instructions, was I ended up unbolting the drive shaft, which made a huge difference. That allowed the whole axle to be able to be dropped down. Now, I'm lucky to have a lift here, but this is something that I can see being done on just some jack stands and using like a standard car jack. But you want to have that jack under the axle itself so that you can adjust the height. And being able to drop that down was huge. And then, the last thing you got to make sure you do is the breather tube for the axle, because you will end up pulling that out as well. So once you drop all that down, the springs come out. You can unbolt the shocks, or unbolt the shocks, and then the springs come out, and all that is great. And then the next thing I did was unbolt the lower and upper control arms, and I installed a kit that actually pushes the control arms forward. If you don't install that, the angle of the drive shaft is going to be wrong. And then also the centering of the tire inside the wheel well will be a little off. So I did put that in there, which pushed the axle forward and also caused it to rotate the axle just a hair. So that turned out really good as well. It took me a minute, but I put that in there. Now the kit, I will say the kit comes with cam bolts for the lower control arm, so you can adjust it when you're trying to do a front end alignment. I chose not to use those. I use there's washers that come in there that are kind of rectangular, and that keeps it so that it's a neutral position. So I put those in there to keep it neutral, and then installed everything back up, and then just started putting everything in there. The springs first. I pulled out the bump stops, and you had to reinstall it. Now in my kit in particular, my bump stop was it was a 1-inch lift already on the Jeep, so I had to separate everything. I installed the bump stop, pushed that up, and then added the spring, and then raised that up. Once it's all installed, put in the shocks. I lowered the brake calipers, which that comes with a nice kit. Or not the brake calipers, excuse me, the brake lines, so that they wouldn't hit. Now, one thing I did do is I made sure that if you're at full flex, you're not hitting the brake at all, which was I did some minor tweaks to make that work. And the brake lines themselves are soft enough. If you're really careful, you can kind of massage them into size, which is no big deal. So yeah, installed all that, and that went pretty well. The hardest thing I ran into on the front was dealing with the exhaust. You have to extend the exhaust. So it comes with a kit where it extends it about 3 to 4 inches. And in that kit, it worked well with the kit, but my bolts were completely rusted. So I actually had to grind off the old bolts and push out there was like a nut fitting in there. You can push that out, and then you can run a through bolt, and that fixed that issue and was able to reinstall that. Because if you don't push the the way that the exhaust comes down and across the drive shaft, if you don't end up pushing that back, the drive shaft won't have enough room to do a full droop when you're trying to flex the thing out. And then I also had to move the evac system over a little bit by like maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches, which again is really no big deal. And that's just to allow room for that drive shaft to move around when you're flexing, going off road. And then I spun the whole thing around and started on the rear. It is basically the same steps on the rear. The only difference on the rear was there was for the panhard bar, there's like this bracket that extends it and pushes it up a little bit. But all in all, it was pretty much the same. It was really once you do the front, you kind of understand what you have to do on the rear, and it kind of came together pretty well. Yeah, so super excited that. So I got the 3-inch lift, and then I drove around for it a little bit. I drove around to try to get it front in alignment, and then it actually drove really well, surprisingly, out of the box, which I was pretty happy with. But one thing to note is if you go somewhere like a standard place to get a front end alignment, they won't touch it if it has a lift. Typically, they won't touch it. So I went down to my friends at Offroad Warehouse down here, just in Marietta, Georgia, and was able to get them to fix that. And at that same time, they realized that my tie rods for my steering and my steering stabilizer, 140,000 miles and rust, didn't do it any favors. So we replaced that at the same time. And then I also went ahead and ordered new wheels and tires at the same time. So you can kind of see that the wheels and tires behind me as well. But I went with 35s, and I went with Toyo RTs. What is it? Open Country RTs. Really nice set of tires. They don't make any road noise. Really happy with that solution overall. So I'm just so thrilled to actually have a good stance on the Jeep. I did forget to mention something. In the rear, when you put the suspension lift on it, for the sway bars, those sway bar end links, if you have stock rims from the Jeep, and either they're stock ones or they're takeoffs, they will hit the inside of the rim. So be careful on that. You're going to have to get spacers to push that off, which I left the spacers on when I put the new tires or the new rims on, even though the rims have spacers as well. But yeah, that's really it. I mean, really stoked, again, to have everything fully done and whatnot. So, yeah, so hopefully that gives you a good understanding of what I did. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and thanks for watching.